there was like a little bit of an element of risk because you were purchasing those items up front. Hey guys, welcome back, or welcome if you're new. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you probably know that I have had experience in several MLMs. I've talked a lot about my experience with LuLaRoe, the women's clothing MLM, but in one of my previous videos, I actually gave my entire MLM history, and the one that I started with was Avon. So I wanted to share today kind of the story of how I got into Avon and what that experience was like, and then how and why I left that company. So I guess I should back up a little bit and explain what Avon is if you're not familiar with it and what sort of products they did carry. So Avon has been around since probably the 50s or 60s, and I know like the thing that everyone always talks about is the Avon lady and like ding dong, Avon calling. So it was one of the early direct sales companies, and it was sort of meant for women who didn't have a lot of career opportunities at that time, or maybe needed something more flexible. They could kind of just go around their neighborhood and sell lipsticks and stuff to other women who were also at home. So I appreciate the origin of wanting to be like an empowering thing for women, and some women actually did do very well with building businesses. They had like a certain level of like career and some kind of success that they built up through Avon, and that did give that opportunity to them. So while I'm appreciative of that, especially the fact that they in their later years have moved to a more predatory type of multi-level marketing MLM model, it's definitely not the same place or idea that it was when it started. But as far as the type of products that were carried, I guess it was primarily, cosmetics, lotion, hair care, perfume, all kinds of makeup. But then there was a lot of other like random stuff in the catalogs, and they changed frequently. So there was clothing a lot of times, like even shoes and things. There was a lot of housewares and like kitchen items, serving tools and little kitchen gadgets. So I mean, there was all sorts of stuff. I think like kids toys and basically all sorts of different products. So it wasn't just a like makeup thing, and it almost you almost couldn't say like you specialize in makeup, because there was so many different products and things. And then during the time that I was selling Avon, they also branched out into kind of a side brand called Mark, which was targeted toward like young girls, teens, young women. And so it was basically the same. Like if you sell Avon, you also sell Mark, but it was a separate paper catalog that you bought, and again, separate branded items, but you ordered them all together and it all worked the same way. Avon also has a lot of like celebrity endorsers. I'm not thinking of any off the top of my head right now, but I know that there's been many celebrities over the years, who have partnered with Avon on promoting like a certain perfume, or sometimes they're just like the face of Avon. So, they do have sort of like a, maybe it gives them like a little bit more of a air of legitimacy, because they do work with like these pretty big celebrities. So I feel like I'm kind of nostalgic for like the 90s and early 2000s lately. I've been listening to some podcasts that cover like pop culture things that happened during that time, and I feel like I've just been seeing a lot of people talking about things from that era. Like music from the 90s is now on the oldies stations. So this story takes place around that time frame. It was actually the early 2000s. So disclaimer, when I joined Avon, it actually was not an MLM company. So Avon actually became an MLM in 2005, and before that, I'm not sure what you would specifically call the company structure, but it was like, I guess, a direct selling company, but it wasn't that structure where you necessarily earn more money for recruiting people, and especially that you would earn more for having a team than you would for selling the actual products. So I just wanted to clear that up. You'll see in my story of how I joined, I wasn't really like fully aware of what was going on, but I definitely, you know, there was nothing about it that was MLM structure at that time for me to even have an inkling that there was anything, you know, potentially problematic about it. So at the time I was in college, and I had a family member who worked in an industry where there was often just like an Avon catalog sitting around that, you know, somebody in the building was an Avon lady maybe, and they would like leave their catalog, you know, one on every floor or something, and people would just leave their orders, and then, you know, the next week she'd deliver everyone's stuff. So that was sort of the, you know, the industry and the experience that this family member had with Avon. And so they said, hey, you're living in the dorm. You could do this same kind of setup with the girls in your college dorm. You know, have a catalog in every hall, take their orders the next week, give everyone their stuff. You can make a little extra money on the side while you're in college. So it sounded like a good idea. So while I was home over the summer, this is early days of the internet, but I assume I went on the internet to find, you know, put in a request for my local Avon lady, because at the time Avon was very like regionally or like locally focused. So like with a lot of other MLMs now and you know, since then, you could join the team of basically anyone in the country. You know, if I live in Maine and I have a friend in California who sells this thing and recruits me to their team, I could be on their team, even though we're on totally opposite corners of the country. With Avon, it was more of like a regional thing, and I don't know all the names of the different titles and roles, but there were, you know, like regional leaders who had their local teams. I think they would, you know, they would do like local meetings for those local people, and there was sort of more like regional local competition, because actually I'll just share that later on somebody that I did 31 gifts with was telling me that she was kind of iffy about joining 31 because she had previously sold Avon, and she was like, there's so much competition with the local people and I don't want to be in competition with you and your local. And I had to explain, like, 31 was not set up like that. None of the other MLMs that I did were set up like that. There was really no like territories or, you know, like, I'm the local Avon lady of this block, you can't sell Avon. You know, it wasn't like that with any of the other businesses that I had done, but with Avon it was set up kind of more in that way. So like I said, I found, you know, whoever was the local person in my area that I would be signing up with, and she actually came to my house. We sat in the living room, she spread out all this paperwork on the coffee table, and we sat there on the sofa, and she was like talking to me about it, and I'm like, just like, let me sign up for this thing and give me the catalogs and let me go. And she was like doing a whole spiel about this. I think I had to pay some amount of money. It couldn't have been huge. Like maybe it was like $5 or, you know, maybe $20, $25, but I don't think it was like that much money. But I think I did have to pay in something. And then that actually might have covered, you know, that I got my first set of catalogs and maybe like order forms and some other materials. I actually, before recording this, went to look for any old catalogs or materials that I might have saved. I've saved stuff from, again, the other companies that I had participated with. I couldn't find anything for Avon. And when I get to the third act of this story about how I left Avon, I think you'll see how I just like ruthlessly threw everything out. But so I don't have anything visual aid wise to show you, but you know, Avon at the time that I started selling came in like these little smallish, kind of thick catalogs. We had like carbon paper order forms, so you would make like 2 or 3 copies at one time. And she might have given me like some little tiny samples of things, maybe like perfume samples or lipstick samples. They were kind of known for both of those things and for giving out samples. But yeah, so I definitely had like some stuff to get started with. And again, you know, she was like giving me a whole spiel, and I have no clue what she even talked about, because I really was just like, yeah, let me sign up and, you know, it basically will sell itself, right? Like, I'll just hand out the catalogs and people will tell me what they want and that'll be it. So that's how I signed up. I don't think I really probably did anything with it over the summer. And then when I got back to school, you know, my big plan was I'm gonna make little posters and hang them up in the dorm and people will come to me. I arrived back at school and some other girl in my dorm had already hung posters all over the dorm. Hey, I'm your Avon lady in the dorm. So that idea was just out the window. So what ended up happening is the family member who had originally recommended that I sell Avon actually took my catalogs to her workplace, just like, you know, what she had experienced previously, and she would leave them around, you know, on the different desks or floors or however they were split up. And so she kind of ended up being almost like a partner in this. But so she would take the catalogs in, she would collect people's orders. I would enter the orders online. So what would happen is I didn't have a website. I think at the time there actually was an option to have a personal website for people to shop from, but again, this is the early 2000s, so I mean, online shopping definitely wasn't as prevalent as it is now, and you had to pay extra for that. It wasn't part of like your monthly, you know, just like basic package of being a Avon lady. You had to pay additional. So I was like, I don't need a website. So people would write out their orders on paper order forms, or maybe even just like on a piece of scrap paper. And you know, my family member would collect them and then they would read them to me over the phone, because remember, I'm away at college now. I'm actually in like a different city. So they'd call me once a week or every other week, read them to me over the phone. I would go into my like back office Avon website and enter in all of those items. So every item in the Avon catalog had like a 6-digit code. So I would just like key them all in. And then I guess the Avon deliveries, I don't think they came via, you know, like a regular delivery service like a FedEx or a UPS. I think there was actually specific people in your area who would pack up your items into these really nice boxes. The Avon boxes are actually the one thing that I have saved from all this. They're great for storing stuff and moving. We have a stack of them in the basement. But so they would pack them in these really nice boxes and then deliver them to your house on your specific delivery day. So again, I'm not there physically. They were going to my, you know, my house back home. So they would get delivered, and then that family member actually would package everything up into little paper bags. That was actually one other thing that maybe I got, or maybe I was ordering separate as far as like equipment and supplies, but there were Avon paper bags of varying sizes, from like a little teeny tiny paper bag to like a lunch bag size, a much bigger bag. They even had like really big shopping bags with handles if there were very large orders or large items. But so that person would pack those things up and then take them into their work, you know, the next time, and then collect the money from the people who had ordered things. So they weren't paying up front. They actually were paying when those products were delivered to them, and then I guess get that money back to me. So I guess the step that I forgot was when I entered all those 6-digit codes in on my end, I paid out of pocket for those items. Now I paid at a discount because, you know, I was kind of buying them wholesale or whatever you want to think, but so I wasn't paying catalog price. But then when the people paid me, they would pay me the price that was in the catalog, and so whatever was the difference between what I paid and what they paid was my profit. Now sometimes things would go on sale in the catalog, and you know, so that would potentially cut into your actual profits. But as far as what consultants paid, I think the base cost was like that you get like a 20 or 25% discount off of the price in the catalog. So basically your profit would be 20 or 25%. But depending on the volume of your order, or maybe your volume for like that month total or the previous month, you would actually get a larger discount. So you could get up to maybe a 35 or 40% discount, which means your profit actually would be 35 or 40%. So hopefully that makes sense, but there was like a little bit of an element of risk because you were purchasing those items up front, and then if that person never accepted them or never paid you back for them. You're just out that money and you're stuck with those things. So I know a lot of times what people expect of an Avon lady is that she already has like a large stock of products. I never kept products in stock. I certainly wasn't selling them in person at like, you know, events, or sometimes you'll see like an Avon booth at the mall or something. I wasn't doing any of that. So I wasn't ordering anything until someone ordered it from me. So what that means is, again, you know, I didn't have like stock of items for somebody to just grab if they just wanted something. It was like a couple weeks process for me to get their order, you know, Avon to deliver it, and then me to deliver it back to them. So it wasn't like an instant gratification kind of thing, which I think is what some people thought of when they thought of Avon. So one other thing about Avon, I've talked a lot about the catalog, and so I learned relatively early that you would always have an expense of purchasing catalogs. So a new catalog actually came out every other week. I know a lot of you know, direct sales MLM companies now have a new catalog maybe every quarter, maybe every month, but Avon would put out a new catalog or a new campaign. Each campaign would last 2 weeks. So every other week you're getting a whole new set of catalogs. And I realized that you had to purchase those catalogs every time. The way that I learned this was, there was one week where I knew I was going to be on vacation or somehow unavailable during, you know, the majority of this upcoming campaign, and I was like, well, I just won't buy the catalogs that week. And my whoever upline director, whatever it was called, called me and said, oh hey, I noticed that you forgot to order your catalogs this week. Don't worry, I ordered them for you. And I said, you know, I'm not going to be here, so that's why I didn't order them. And she was like, oh well, you have to. In order to stay active, you must order those new catalogs every week or every other week. So that's how I learned that lesson. But so they also, you know, they'll cut into your profits. So again, you know, if you're thinking about you're earning 25% of whatever sales you have for that 2-week period, minus the cost of those catalogs, the cost of shopping bags if you need them, the cost of samples, because like even though it's not required, a lot of people love and expect that you're gonna throw in a couple little samples into their bag. So, you know, all those other little things added up. And my you know, my goal and what I told myself with not just Avon, but any other company that I was involved with was like, I will do it as long as I am not losing money. So while I probably wasn't losing money, I was maybe breaking even. If I was earning money, you know, it was like a very little bit. It probably wasn't worth the effort that I was putting into it. And remember, for a lot of this time, or, you know, at least a couple years while I was still in college, I had a family member who was doing a lot of this work. So, I don't think it was probably worth the amount of effort that everyone was putting into it, but I wasn't like losing tons and tons of money. Again, if I had been purchasing a lot of inventory specifically to like keep on hand and keep in stock, I can see how that would rack up very quickly and you could get yourself in the hole really quick. But for me, again, because I was just ordering things as people ordered them from me, I wasn't building up like that much of, you know, not debt, but like I wasn't, you know, building up that much of an inventory and putting that much money into the company. And so it just wasn't probably worth the amount of effort that we were putting in. So after I did graduate from college and move back to my home area, you know, I did continue selling Avon for several more years after that. Even, you know, when I started my job, I would take the catalog into work with me, and I had people in my office who were ordering Avon from me. Different friends and family members and people knew like, oh, you know, she sells Avon. You know, there's this lotion that they have that I like, I'll order it through her. Through this whole time, I never had a website, so everyone had to come directly to me to place their order. Like I said, you know, it was maybe on a scrap of paper, maybe we had some order forms available for them, but it wasn't like anything formal or like formalized. And for the most part, you didn't collect that payment until you actually delivered the product to the customer. So there was always that little bit of risk. So how and when did I stop selling Avon? So I started selling 31 in 2012. And I quit Avon at almost the exact same time. And again, you know, at the time that I signed up for Avon, it was not in the MLM model. I never participated in any of the monthly meetings or any team things, so I had no clue about any of that. I guess they sent out like newsletters or maybe emails or something from some like higher up local person, because I saw like, you know, oh, they're meeting in this firehouse for their monthly meeting or something, but I never did any of that. I was like totally oblivious to it. So when I started selling 31, I just reached out to whoever was that current upline person, and I was like, hey, I'm quitting Avon. And it was kind of like a big thing. I forget what happened, but you know, obviously it's not just as easy as just saying like switch my thing off. Like you probably have to put in like a formal request to actually resign. And even for a while after that, I was continuing to get like her emails and stuff, and I would write to her and say like, hey, I quit this, please stop emailing me. And she would say like, oh, you know, it takes a month for you to come off my mailing list or whatever. So eventually it did stop. Obviously I'm off the books now from Avon. That was like over 10 years ago now. But so basically when I started selling 31, I just had so much of a better experience compared to how my Avon experience was, that I just instantly was like, I'm quitting from Avon. So I think that's pretty much my whole story. Hopefully it was organized and made sense. Usually I make myself notes for these things, but I just decided to wing it this time. So again, hopefully you found that interesting. Maybe it was like a little bit of a nostalgic look back to the days of catalogs and ordering forms and not having websites and e-commerce. But if you enjoyed this story, give me a thumbs up. Again, you know, in addition to Avon, I then sold 31. I sold Keep Collective, which was an offshoot of the Stella and Dot jewelry brand. And then I did LuLaRoe, which I have spoken about here extensively. But if you'd like to hear about my experiences with either of those other companies, or anything else about Avon, I guess, please do leave me a comment and let me know what you're interested in. You can check out some of my other videos, particularly about LuLaRoe. You'll probably find those interesting if you like this, and maybe you'll like some other stuff on my channel, so please subscribe if you haven't. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.